Okay, brilliant. Well, there's quite a few of us, so I'll kick off. Good morning, everybody, again. And on behalf of the Spanish Chamber of Commerce in the UK, thank you so much for being with us this morning for our hospitality panel discussion, which is on the topic of preparing for success in the new normal. Obviously, a very pertinent subject, given the new announcements that we've all heard a couple of days ago. For those of you who don't know me, so I'm Hannah. I'm the head of events at the Spanish Chamber, and I'm going to be moderating this morning's discussion, for which we're delighted to be joined by Adam Monday, who is the General Manager of the Melia White House and the Melia London Kensington hotels in London, and who are patron members of our chamber. Adam is an award-winning hotelier with over 25 years experience in global hotel brands across all segments of the industry. We're also joined by Yvonne Wissart, who is the Director of Sales at the Now Hotel in Central London, who are benefactor members of our chamber. Yvonne's career trajectory spans over 20 years within the hospitality sector, and she's worked for a variety of large multinational hotel brands, as well as privately owned luxury boutique hotels. We're also joined by Pablo Torres, who is a hospitality consultant at Torres Consulting. Pablo has over 20 years of professional experience in the hotel industry and has implemented projects in over 25 countries, having trained and coached over 2,000 hotel associates and stakeholders. We really want this to be a very interactive session this morning, so please do write in at any point with your comments, opinions, or details of your own experiences and questions for the speakers at any time you like. You can do that using the tools that you can see at the bottom of your screen. So there's either the Q&A tool there or the chat tool where you can write in directly to the panelists. We're just going to have some questions directly for each speaker to begin with, and then at the end there'll be plenty of time for all of your questions to be answered by the speakers. Brilliant. Okay, so without further ado, Adam, my first couple of questions are for you. Okay.
Okay.
So on the topic, so the first question is on the topic of the rigorous regulations that hotels have had to go through in order to reopen soon. Have you found the government guidance to have been clear enough on this?
I think, Hannah, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to being able to speak on this webinar on what is the UK's hottest day, I think. It's a really good question, and my simple answer is probably it is, but it's open to interpretation, as a lot of government advice is. I think the one thing that the industry has felt, and certainly talking to colleagues and friends in the industry, is that the regulations have been quite simply posted too late. Now, I think those people who work for large multinational brands will have benefited from the scale of their companies that have provided advanced regulation, advanced protocol, advanced processes. But I think if I was running an independent hotel or restaurant or coffee shop, and I didn't have that level of support, I think the guidance has been published quite late. However, the 4th of July has been long time muted as the date that our industry would reopen. So I think whilst the guidance has been late, I think people will and should have been preparing for this opening date for a long time. There's also a lot of other ways that you can find information on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn has been an excellent source of information over the last period of lockdown. And as soon as businesses were looking at reopening, UK Hospitality posted some advice. The caterer has been posting updates. So I think the regulations are good. I think as with everything, and in our business, we are dealing with the public. So you can have as many regulations as you wish, but they have to be done. And if you look at some of the images yesterday in the UK, on Bournemouth Beach, for example, Bournemouth Beach was full of people yesterday. I'm not sure there was 2 meters or even 1 meter between towels. So I think the regulations can be good, but the public have to be willing to follow them. And here at Melia, we have our Stay Safe with Melia program that has been designed in conjunction with a global health and safety advisory company. And so we know when we're ready to open our hotels, we will be offering as safe an environment as we possibly can.
Fantastic. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Another question that I have for you is, how have you been handling the challenge of managing your hotel's teams and staff throughout the whole pandemic?
I think I probably won't say anything different to how everybody's been managing their hotels and teams. I certainly hadn't used Zoom before lockdown. Now it seems to be a new word. Are we Zooming? Are we catching up on Zoom? So a typical day for me could be a Zoom, a Skype, a Teams meeting, a WhatsApp call, all of which has enabled us to stay close to our teams. I think certainly for myself and my management style, I found it very difficult to manage remote teams because I'm very much a people person. So I've definitely missed that close personal relationships with the team and gauging people's opinions in a meeting room rather than on an email or a Zoom, because if people decide not to have their Zoom camera on, it's even more difficult to read. But what we've done at Melia is we've tried very hard to keep in regular contact with our teams through those technology channels I mentioned. But also the department heads have kept close to their teams. What I think has proved difficult is with people that are on furlough, because clearly people that are on furlough have no obligation to engage if they don't want to. But I'm pleased to say that, you know, voluntarily most of our team that are on furlough have wanted to keep in touch. We've done a weekly newsletter that we've sent to our teams, which is a little bit of fun as well as factual. And we've done many social evenings. So we've been running masterclasses by our heads of department. We've had a cocktail masterclass. We've had a security masterclass from our security manager. Myself and my hotel manager at White House, we did a masterclass on our journey, all to try and keep the levels of engagement high. Because I think we've been very conscious that once the hotel closed in March, that, you know, people are not used. This is not normal for people. People like to work, so we tried very hard to keep in touch. But I have to say, personally, I found it very difficult, and I've certainly learned a lot about communication skills during this time.
Great, yeah, fair enough. Yvonne, I wonder if you have anything to add to either of those topics from your experience with your at the Now Hotel.
Yeah, so first of all, on your government's legislation, I think some of them were quite positive and very helpful for hospitality industry. The regulation that they introduced, for instance, the fellow scheme, I think that was well received by all of the hotels and hospitality companies. And also the fact that we finally announced the opening of the hotels. I think it was well overdue, and we've been waiting for some sort of a opening date, especially in comparison to what's happening to the rest of Europe. What I think didn't quite very well is that 14-day quarantine, which is still currently in place, and it's basically not allowing international travelers to come to UK and to travel before the recovery process will be much slower. I think what would be better, in a hindsight, of course, would be to have it done sooner rather than at the end of the pandemic in UK. But generally, the advice that we found, similar to Adam, we have a great support of our international companies. NH is Spanish company based in headquarters in Madrid. We are now international company because we're part of the miners. So there was a lot of guidelines and specific indication of how to process and how to follow the protocol. So that was extremely helpful, because we do have, just like the other hotel, clear guidelines and protection for our clients and for our staff when we're running the Feel Safe campaign at NH. In terms of keeping in touch, I am in sales, so I am part of a larger team, regional team. So from sales point of view, I must admit, we've been pretty well organized with Zoom or Teams meeting. We moved to the Teams from business Skype, which we found working much better with sharing documents and going through the presentations. So I've been working remotely since March at home and managed to just keep the sales going, but also adopted responsibility of some of the colleagues who are furloughed. So the marketing, the reaction events team, where the booking needed to be cancelled or postponed, or RFP needed to be actioned, I was still involved in that. So I had to learn a new skills, so to speak. But we also kept in touch with GM and the rest of the team on a weekly Teams meeting. We also met up on a social kind of basis once a week, try to stay in touch and have a drinks over the computer and interact with each other as you do. But yes, I admit it's been quite challenging. You kind of need to stay focused on what is important and concentrate on what you can do. So it was nice to see people, and we still have a skeleton team at Now London, so they look after different departments. So it was good to get an update from them from time to time, and also from our GM and myself.
Brilliant. And also, Yvonne, with regards to repositioning the Now Hotel, because I appreciate that the hotel and the Now Hotel is very new, isn't it? You only actually opened the doors at the end of last year. So rather than, in the experience of, for example, the Melia White House is a much more established hotel in London that's been around for a while, how do you think it's been for you with a quite new property in London? In that regard?
To be honest with you, it's been a really exciting journey. We are a new brand in UK. We are the first Now brand. So all eyes were on us in terms of the company. It was very, very exciting. There are only 6 Now hotels, and Now is spelled NHOW, for those who don't know. And it's a fantastic product. We've got only 6 of those property. They are in Milan, Rotterdam, Marseille, Berlin, us, and also newly appointed in January in Amsterdam. So the product has been supported by our brand vision. We had amazing PR events to launch it. The company concentrated on it a couple of years before the hotel opened. I joined in March 2019. And ever since, I have been involved off-site, of course, in putting the hotel on the map. We had a great media coverage and PR events, as I mentioned, last year. And this year, we opened with the bank with Mice Book events in January, followed by the clients event that some of your guests might have attended. And unfortunately, the COVID hit us and we had to close in March. So we almost will be using the reopening in July as a second opening, to be honest with you, Hannah. Luckily, we've managed to hold those events in January. Original plans were actually to postpone it till March, and thanks God we didn't, because at least people get to see us before. Yes, we will be, it was challenging, it was exciting, but those things happen. So you just kind of needs to adopt, just like all of us. I think nothing will stay the same. We're gonna have to find a new ways of dealing with COVID and adapting to it. So my approach is we will use the July opening as a kind of second opening and go with the message of feeling safe, go with the message of virtual tours, go with the message of, repositioning the hotel on a map of East London.
Fair enough. Adam, I wonder if you have anything to add to that, because I appreciate the Melia Hotel in Kensington is also quite new. It only opened up last year as well, didn't it? So have you found the experience of that one as opposed to with the Melia White House, which has been around for a while longer?
Yeah, the Melia White House has been in the Melia family for 20 years, and an iconic central London hotel. So that already has an established reputation. But the Melia Kensington, we took over as the management company pretty much a year and a half ago, and took it into the Melia family as what we call a white label hotel, which was a brand that allowed us to for it to be part of the family, but not a full-blown Melia. And then the owner undertook a multi-million-pound renovation to turn it into the Melia London Kensington, which is part of the Melia collection. And the Melia collection is a small group of outstanding hotels ranging from Dubai, Capri in Italy, Serengeti in Africa, Kensington, and one in Vietnam. So it's part of a very small collection of hotels. And we will now position this hotel as a singular luxury property focusing on location, experience, food and beverage. This is very different to what the hotel was a year and a half ago. So I think the question is, what will the strategies will be in the future? I think in the immediate future, and the other panelists may or may not agree, but for me, there's three things that people are going to look for. One is a brand that they can trust and say that we believe this brand are going to make us feel safe, because that's what I would do if I was traveling. The second is what experience they can give me, because I think if I can talk about Melia, some of our hotels opened in Germany a couple of weeks ago, and actually the comments from the customer was they wanted more experience. We were we were offering a room experience and nothing else. And actually the feedback was from the clientele that they wanted more. They wanted to have a breakfast experience. They wanted to have a restaurant experience. So I believe there is an appetite for that, but it needs to be done in a safe environment and through a good experience. And the third one, I think, is about location, because if I was booking a destination in a city, I would want to try and walk everywhere. At the moment, I think there is still an advice from the UK government, to try and avoid public transport. Now, if that is the message from the UK government, that clearly will be known and felt by visitors. So if you take Kensington and White House, both of them sit in very good locations in London that allow people to explore by foot different parts of London. So I think three things. Am I going to be safe with this company? Am I going to get a good experience? And does the location fulfill my desire of the visit? Because as we all know, London is hugely busy most of the time, and hotels that are out in the end zones of the underground always are busy because central London's busy. Now I think people wouldn't particularly want to be staying out on the zones outside of central London. That would mean, although it might mean a cheaper room, it will mean more travel on public transport. So I think that's going to be a big thing. And I think brands like Airbnb, I think at the moment, there's two opinions on Airbnb. One is that people may feel comfortable booking an Airbnb because they will feel more safe and secure in their own space. The second is, do they trust the Airbnb to have been as deep or cleaned as a hotel will promise to be? So I've heard different opinions from different people. Some people say, I want an Airbnb because I can then cook for myself. Once I'm in, I don't need to rely on room service or a housekeeping service. But secondly is how much do you trust the person who owns the B&B that they've cleaned it, as well as some of the bigger brands. So Airbnb was always the hidden threat to our business, and nobody knows exactly how many Airbnb rooms there are. It fluctuates all the time. But I personally believe that the brands will benefit in the short term ahead of someone like Airbnb.
Fair enough. So a lot of good food for thought there. Yvonne, another question I have for you is there anything you'd like to tell us about the strategies that now has been undertaking to grow your hotel's market share?
Yes, so B2C is our main focus, but not obviously without business to business, which is also key. Location-wise, which is something what Adam mentioned, it's extremely important, and we know that when we opened the hotel, we did lots of research, and East London it's the most growing, or it was the most growing area at the time, ever since the Olympics ended. So it was just the amount of development around Shoreditch, Liverpool Street, Old Street, it was tremendous. We had a big companies moving in with offices like Microsoft and Amazon and Google and Cisco and lots of others. So the potential was definitely there, and obviously Old Street was known and it is known as a Silicon Valley roundabout because of the huge technology companies and startup businesses. So the strategy is obviously to take the share of that pie and work with our global team on the accounts that we can access through the existing relationship. But when I took over, my main focus is also work with the smaller local businesses, so we can offer exciting new product, we can add to what's already there, we can work with existing brand and existing businesses. But because we're a little bit different, very iconic, we've got fantastic flexitarian food options, we've got amazing bar and a lobby concept, very much going with the area of the Shoreditch, with design. I mean, the whole interior design has been done by Project Orange, which is Shoreditch-based interior design company. So it's attracting clientele like a magnet, not only the local, but also international. So the strategy of the hotel is to focus and continue on a brand. If people know now brand from Berlin and Milan, that's sort of a similar experience we will be offering in London. On a different scale, the hotel have three relatively small to medium meeting rooms, which is ideal now actually for the pandemic. So it's not as large as Berlin or Amsterdam, for instance, but we do have 190 bedrooms. So definitely corporate hotel, attracting the local clientele, but also fantastic weekend leisure hotel close by to the city and West End relatively. We also have a great bikes stands around the hotel, which we are heavily promoting again, especially now. People can grab it and go for a ride bike, something that we will be focusing on summer. But yeah, that's in a nutshell what we are trying to focus.
Fair enough, that sounds great. Adam, do you have anything you'd like to add about what you've been doing with your hotels in that regard?
I think our sales force has been staying in close contact with our clients through the various technology means I mentioned. I think one of the strategies that we've been looking at is the need to look for new types of business. Melia Whitehouse recently added a number of meetings and event spaces to its facilities because our mice business was performing very well. Sadly, I'm not sure that's going to return anytime soon. From what I read, it looks like the mice business may not return to the similar levels until 22 or 23 or if ever, because as we know that Zoom now and all of these things have taken over, it's going to have to be a real important meeting to be able to come and do something face to face. Although all of our facilities are ready, we've recapacitated our meeting space based on social distancing measures, and we are still getting inquiries for Q4 of this year. But I think the strategies that once existed won't exist anymore, or some of them won't exist anymore. So our sales team are looking for new ways to generate new business with new partners. And I think it will open up a different type of business to the hotels. But I think Yvonne made a very good point earlier, and I think it's a point we'll talk about later, is that, you know, the staycation is going to be important, but it's not enough for London. You know, the staycation is great and it will help, but with the capacity that London has, it just isn't enough. And I think London is amazing, but it's not on the beach. So Devon, Cornwall, Lake District, Scotland, these places are ones I would choose for a staycation. So I think the government have made a very conscious decision to talk about staycation, But really for London, London depends so much on foreign travel, US travel, which provides a strong base. So I think in the short term, and Pablo, I think we'll talk about it later, is that, you know, the hotel industry in London has to be very careful that it doesn't cause a price war, because people are going to be desperate for business. You know, we're all going to be desperate for business, and there is a real worry for me personally that the rates will continue to decline and decline and decline, and actually that's not good for anybody. However, you know, one of the hotels I'm responsible for is a managed hotel, so I know the demands of the owner are also to keep the hotel busy. So it's a real big balance. So I think in summary, the strategies are, whatever strategies you had, check that they're still fit for purpose, because I think you'll probably find that they're not anymore.
Yeah, fair enough. There's a lot of very interesting points in there indeed. Okay, well, Pablo, moving on to you now. We're really pleased to have you with us this morning for being able to give a much more general view of the hospitality sector. More generally speaking. So, can you tell us how can you describe what the impact of the pandemic has been on the hospitality industry as a whole, and what you think the situation will be like once hotels are shortly allowed to reopen, and what is the overall impact of the pandemic on the industry and your kind of forecast for the industry as it goes about reopening?
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for having me, and thank you for the Spanish Chamber of Commerce here in the UK. So yeah, I'd like to take a zoom out, give some numbers in terms of the bigger picture of what it means for the industry globally. And if we look at the United Nations World Travel Organization, which is the one providing global numbers, they're talking about, in terms of job losses, 100 million job losses. They have 3 different scenarios. That's the average. And that means that 1 billion less trips taken globally this year, and $1 trillion less in terms of revenue globally. Okay, that's the global picture. Basically because of the travel restrictions that there are in most countries, or they've been, even though in the UK we still have the quarantine. So if there is travel restrictions, obviously airlines cannot travel. So the International Air Transport Organization is expecting to have a 50% drop on business this year. So if you look at specifically at the European airlines, so you have the big flagship kind of British Airways, Lufthansa, KLM, they're talking about using 25-30% of the fleet once they are able to operate. And then you have the low cost, EasyJet, Ryanair, maybe 40-50%. So even if those flights were full, you will have a maximum 40-50% of the guests that you used to have in the past. Yeah. And that is only when they're able to travel. You know? So linking to the panelists were saying before, with the quarantine, although we're expecting it to be some news next Monday, 29th, in terms of the either removing it or you know, at least not keeping it much longer. 60% of the reservations, they are done at least 2 weeks in advance. So even though the quarantine is lifted, you still have to give a few more weeks for people to be able to make their plans, to make their bookings for the flights. So it will take several more weeks. So when talking about focusing on hotels, most eyes have been put in China since the beginning of the pandemic, because they were the first ones to close and obviously the first ones to open. And so the hotels in China have been open like for 2.5 months roughly. And you can see the occupancy has been going up slowly up until 40-50%. They're sitting at 50% at the moment. And we see with our clients that it fluctuates weekdays and weekends, but it's kind of plateauing there at 50%. US, they haven't really closed as a country, so their hotels are around like 40%, and very similar numbers in the Middle East. So if that is a reference in terms of what is to be expected in Europe or in the UK in particular, we might be looking at, and that is a big concern in a lot of forums, the 50 or 60% might be the new full. You know, it will take a while until, you know, thinking on when to reach 2019 numbers. It depends on the industry. Hotels are expecting maybe like 2-3 years to pick up those levels of occupancy. But when it comes to airlines, for example, they're talking like 4 or 5 years to recover the number of passengers that they used to have up to last year. And that's occupancy. So in hotels, but then you have to focus on the profitability. So if, as Adam was saying, if you drop rates, you might have the same occupancy, but obviously the profit is lower. So linking it to the latest biggest crisis that they were affecting the hospitality industry, the 9/11 or the big economic crisis a few years ago, it took over 3 years to reach the RevPAR that the hotels used to have in the past, and up to 6 years to go back to the GoPAR levels. So it's going to be a very slow process, which will obviously affect a lot of jobs. You know, we look at, for example, here in the UK, there was a couple of weeks ago, the airlines threatened kind of, or announced they might launch legal action against the government because of the, I'm quoting them here, devastating effects on the airline industry. So that was British Airways, EasyJet and Ryanair making a joint statement with another 200 leaders of the industry here in the UK. Heathrow, for example, they've closed Terminals 3 and 4 until at least the end of the year. And it's not only the airlines as such, it's the airport, it's all the services in and around the airports, all the hotels that are in the area will have to remain closed until next year because there is just no customers whatsoever. So it's going to be a very slow process to go back to where we used to be.
Yeah, fair enough. A lot of very interesting points there. You've obviously touched on this a bit in what you've just said, but is there any other industry trends that you'd like to highlight too?
I mean, more than trends, they're trying to adapt to the market. So because of the travel regulations, so Adam also touched that point on staycation. So they have to focus on the local market. They have to be very, very flexible when it comes to booking. So the booking advance, like a month in advance and give you a discount, obviously that's gone. So hotels have to be very, very flexible and even let customers cancel on the same day without any charge. And there is different ways to play with the rates or doing some promotions. It's very, very risky to drop rates because then you can drop them very fast, but it takes a very long time to go back to the previous point. So what we're seeing from the consulting point of view that the firms are doing, it's maybe linking discounts to the loyalty program, which is a way not to dump prices, or start selling rooms. If you have a different inventory in there, you have like 3 different tiers of rooms, sell the top room category at the standard price, let's say. So you don't dump the price, you're just giving customers a better experience in the hotel for the same price. And obviously adapting to the regulations. So depending on the countries, for example, when it comes to the use of the outlets, some countries for breakfast are just, because of the law, they have to put the breakfast in a bag and drop it in the guest room. In other places, they are allowed to have a la carte service, but buffets are gone, for example, for breakfast for the time being. So it's an exercise for hotels or adapting as quick as possible to the so-called new normal, although it's an overused term.
I think Hannah is on mute. So.
I was on mute. I was trying to avoid any background noise being disturbing. Anyway, we're now going to move on to the question and answer part of the session. So thank you everyone who's written in so far with your questions. We've got a good few come through, so that's great. Everyone else, I just please encourage you to just write in, not only with questions, if you want to share with us your kind of experiences with your company or your opinions and things, we'd love to hear those as well. And as I said before, there's the chat function and the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. So please do write it in. Okay, so one question that we've had come in, this one's for Adam and Yvonne, and it's from Andrea Cerezo, who is from our other patron member, Reventos Cornu, who we enjoy working with a lot. So Andrea's question is, with all the government measures being taken, for example, with distancing, lowering amount of clients, how would you be able to keep the same rates of your services, or will there be a rise in the rates for your services?
Yvonne?
Yeah, the short question to this will be yes, for the time being. We obviously, for now, London, we don't have a huge amount of meetings and events spent, but speaking to my colleagues, we obviously very keen to get a brand new business, especially for the Q3 and Q4. But also we are being flexible, and even today on a call, we've been discussing it with the team. What we're trying to do is offering people opportunity to have the 2 or 3 meetings room and do hybrid meetings. So the speaker can be in one room and the meeting for 100, for instance, can be spread between the 3 conference rooms, so it's safe. And yes, we will be very flexible not only with our pricing, but the trend, I think, generally is right now flexibility with the conditions of the meeting. And one of the conditions that we've heard from our meetings and events clients, bearing in mind the COVID, was flexibility with cancellations. No one, people are very nervous, organizers are nervous to book anything in advance in case of a second wave, in case of regulations, what might happen with the company, will they even survive? So anyone who is planning to book Q1 or Q2 even meeting, they need to take the risk into the consideration. So none of the organizer that I know would sign the contract on a dotted line, guaranteeing the advance deposits and the cancellation charges, which we normally had in 2019 or 2018. I'm sure Adam would agree with me. So this is the kind of conditions that we're going to be adapting and changing. And one of the new thing I think that NH hotels are looking at is digitalization, full stop. I mean, I think the fact that we've been working from home and the clients has been talking to us through the calls like this is great. I think we had a great practice with this. I don't think this is gonna go away. I think we will we will incorporate this, especially from sales point of view. Obviously in operation is much difficult, but I think I can see this doing it more often with a nice banner like Adam has behind him, for instance, so you can personalize it. We've done the video conferencing and video tours, so people can click on a button and actually see the hotel. So again, instead of doing it one-to-one, you can actually almost have the same experience by going through the video of the virtual tours. So yeah, the short answer would be yes to that question.
Yeah. I think from my perspective is that we would always want to put the prices up. Of course, that we're in the business of making money, but I think now is not the right time. I think we have to stay competitive. I alluded to the point earlier that there will be a price war. There's going to be a price war, and I think it's up to companies to make their own individual decisions based on their market. But certainly in the hotels that I support, we won't be entering into a price war in different categories of hotel, because each category of hotel has its own place in the market. I wouldn't want to compete with the Park Lane guys, because that's not our market. You have to be comfortable in the market that you sit in, and you have to be proud of the product and service that you represent. And like anything, some of the brands in the world, you don't walk into a Nike shop and ask for a discount. You pay the price because of the product. So I think there's a case for not reducing prices as much. Clearly, there'll be a requirement to drop prices a little. But I think that the biggest thing about prices will come when it comes to renegotiation with our corporate clients, because our corporate clients make up a huge percentage of our business in the White House, for example. And normally you would expect to see somewhere in the region of a 2 to 7 or even more % increase year on year on their negotiated rate. I think our sales teams are going to find that difficult this year, based on a couple of things. One is that I'm not sure that any corporate company will be able to give you an accurate estimate of their production for next year, because they don't know how business travel will look like.
Yeah.
If I take our top clients in the White House, they've suspended business travel for most of the rest of this year. So the rate that they were negotiated with for this year is completely irrelevant, because the volume isn't there. So I think at best, and I'm not sure if my sales director's on the call, but at best I think we'll be hard pushed to even maintain our levels of this year. I think companies will be looking for a decrease in their rate, and then it comes down to an individual property's decision. I think in terms of the prices or the costs that hotels are incurring, I read this morning that the cleaning business of hospitality venues is the biggest boom. As part of this, we're all going to be relying on on the housekeeping departments in our hotels, of which may I say, some people take for granted in our business, and I think now people will soon realise the true value of housekeeping in their hotels, because this will be the single biggest department that gets focused on. And I think before there was an expectation that your room would be clean, and it should be clean. There is now going to be a demand that it's clinically clean. And I think there's a big difference, because our housekeepers are suddenly going to be thrown into the spotlight. So I think there is a lot more cost that hotels are going to have to incur to just offer the same. Now, of course, that cost, we'd love to pass that on to the customer, but I'm not sure in the short term that's going to be a case that we can do that. However, COVID-19 won't ruin or damage or destroy the hospitality business. It will be a blip like the financial crisis, like 9/11, and the business will always come back. I think the sooner the air bridges are open, the sooner a vaccine is found, the quicker the business will get back to normal.
Yeah, fair enough. It's a good point about the air bridges. We'll hopefully hear about that soon, because yeah, I don't know if on that note with the air bridges or the 2-week quarantine for incoming travellers into the UK, if there's anything and any of you would like to add about that, or your ideas about it, your what you think is going to happen in the future.
I think just may I just say that I think Yvonne said it at the start. Until we get established air bridges, of which today I heard that Spain, Greece, and France, I think, will be the first countries that get this air bridge. And as Pablo said, people aren't going to book a hotel until they've booked a plane. They're not going to book a plane until they don't have to quarantine. So there's a knock-on effect to everybody. I think I myself have taken a few gambles and booked a few flights for early August, which I hope the air bridges are dropped. But if you take America as an example, I think some of the luxurious hotels, the Savoy, the Ritz, places like this, I think because their business is so dependent on the American market, I think their openings are even later. I think they're looking at September, because at the moment, if you look in America, the level of COVID deaths and infections every day is huge. So America aren't going to be allowed to fly into the UK unless for essential regions for a while, I think. So the air bridges, I think, will be the kickoff for business. My hotel, Melia White House, in particular, depends hugely on the Spanish market. So we need Spanish people to start traveling again to be able to start getting some volume. So I do, however, support the fact that any government decision is made with the science. And I think the UK government have made it clear that any decision they've made has been based on the scientific evidence. And ultimately, I think it's there to try and protect us. However, I think at the start of the pandemic, we weren't as quick to impose some restrictions on people entering the country. People were able to come in from infected countries without records being taken, temperatures being taken. So the air bridges, for me, is the first sign of a kickoff. If you look at the occupancies in places like Devon, Cornwall, Lake District for the summer, I heard some figures of 80 plus 90% occupancy on the books for these destinations. That's fantastic, and that shows you that the staycation will work. London is different.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you. Sorry about that. My internet had a little something wrong with it. Anyway, moving on. So I've got a question now. Maybe Pablo, this is for you. This is from Carlos, who says, Pablo, you mentioned that about the job losses worldwide and the job market needs, what the job market needs in hospitality, that they're going to change. All big companies are restructuring or will restructure in the near future. They'll restructure their teams. What would you recommend to a hospitality professional that wants to develop to keep up with the job market needs, and to develop their skill sets, I imagine?
I mean, there is a lot of talk now about the technology, obviously contactless check-in, contactless check-out, the invoicing and everything. So as much as possible, trying to avoid enforce social distancing and go more into the technology side. That will be, I mean, the technology was there, it's just been developed quicker or been adopted by many properties faster because they have to adapt. Will it stay forever? In some places it will, because it was already there. In some others it will go back to more kind of face-to-face approach. What is important there is that we don't lose the human factor, which it might be challenging to try to comply with all regulations and at the same time provide that sort of service. So if you're looking at about the workforce on kind of what to look into, there is on one hand, you have all the technology apps and revenue management systems, and that is helping the industry in that sense. So that could be a good path. And the other one is still the human factor, and the way I see it from the front office point of view, let's say, before maybe you used to have a very isolated sort of receptionist, guest relations, duty manager, concierge. And now if the check-in is contactless, you don't need that process anymore, but you might have more of a brand ambassador sort of profile. Someone who is in the lobby, giving that certainty to the guests. Adam was saying before about trust. That's very, very important, to give that feeling of trust to the customers, that everything is all right, the hotel is clean, hotel is safe, and being there for them, be it in the lobby, restaurant, reception, whatever it is. So some roles will evolve into that kind of figure, I would say, just to give you a name, sort of brand ambassador.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point. Andy's written in with an interesting question that I think is maybe for whoever of you would like to answer it. He says, looking at Spain in particular, and on the basis that an air corridor or equivalent comes to exist between Spain and the UK, what's the kind of corporate sentiment in Spain that people actually get on a plane and travel to the UK once they're actually able to, without the quarantine?
27%, that's the figure. So that's the percentage of Spanish people who are willing to travel abroad this year. I don't know if to the UK, but I think in Spain, as in other countries, is mainly going to be about staycation. Most people will rather take the car and go to in most cases to the beach or to a remote location, sort of a rural house, B&B sort of thing, than taking a flight.
It's a really good question, and thank you for the question. If I just talk about Melilla, our mainland coastal hotels in Spain are seeing high volumes of bookings, especially in the Andalusia region, where people from some of the other cities or main cities can drive. And hotels with car parks, strangely, are seeing high levels of bookings. Hotels that are on beaches, obviously, are seeing high levels of bookings. And also the Balearic Islands are now starting to see business pick up, where people can travel by ferry from the mainland with their car. I think Melilla have done a lot of promotional work around hotels being open, but clearly we've not done as much regarding the UK until we get the guarantee that air bridges are open. But the staycation is proving popular in Spain for sure, and then the hotels that I mentioned, they're seeing their pace of business is far ahead of actually where it normally is, but the demographic of person has changed. So whereas British and Germans are our number one clients in our Spanish hotels, Spanish guests are now becoming the number one guests, which is very different to this season.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, another question that we've had come in is, this one's for Adam and Yvonne, and they say, how will the coronavirus impact your hotel growth strategies across the UK? Do you think you're going to open the same number of hotels as planned over the next few years? That's a good question too.
Yeah, globally, we've opened 55%. I think we are on right now at the end of June. But most of that comes from Germany, Netherlands, Denmark, and also a little bit in Italy and Spain. A lot of in Spain because we've got lots of hotels in Spain, obviously. UK is obviously behind. NH Kensington will open on plan as soon as we can this year from the 4th of July. Now London, we're still waiting to be advised, evaluating situation. I'm not sure if it will be in July. It might be a little bit later for the reason that we've already mentioned. I think it's important to evaluate how much business in the books do we have and how much staff to bring from fellow in order to run successful business. This is their decision for individual hotels, GM and owners. But generally where we can, I'm speaking to my colleagues, for instance, with Northern Europe, they are about 3 weeks ahead of us. And you can see a huge difference when I'm speaking to them. Yesterday in Netherlands, I think they abolish the maximum capacity numbers. So they still have a 1 meter rules, but there is no specific amount of people that is not allowed into the venue, which is a game changer. If we could have something similar like this within the UK, that would allow the events industry to start doing some sort of events, and for the events industry to manage how people are filling up the venues, how do they comply with the sitting. It will be still an enormous task, but it's just one extra step ahead in the right direction instead of waiting. I mean, from the 2 meter rules reduced to 1 meter rules, it's a huge, I think, relief for the hotels, because with 2 meter rules, basically you are reducing your capacity by more or less 70%. With 1 meter rooms, you're reducing your capacity more or less with 30%. This is a big difference for all of the venues. So yeah, I mean, we are opening. It's getting better every month. May, when we compare May opening, June opening, and now July, I'm sure there will be a progress. But I am more worried about how sustainable it will be in the big cities, because I also believe what Adam has mentioned and Pablo, seaside location for summer are great, but city center, City of London in July, August, historically it's quite quiet. If you have closed borders and you don't have a group tours, you don't have your FITs, your regular thing, you know, it's only X amount of stuff that you can do.
Yeah, I think I understood the question as how is the future growth of the hotel in the UK. So if I can just give a small information on that, is we currently have 2 hotels in the north of England, Liverpool and Newcastle, under construction. They are both under the Inside by Melia brand, which is our urban lifestyle brand. These hotels will open either late this year or very early next year. We then have 2 further hotels in the pipeline in Northern England and 1 in Scotland. These will open in 2022. So we will improve on our portfolio in the UK quite substantially. In terms of our commitment to the United Kingdom, the Melia White House will be a Melia hotel for many, many years to come. And the company are investing millions of pounds in upgrading the hotel. Those people who know the hotel will know I like to describe a grand old lady with a great heart. We're now bringing that grand old lady into slightly more fashionable times. So we are refurbishing the hotel gradually. It's a large hotel, 580 rooms. So we will gradually refurbish hotels, which we've started already. We are also committed to more management contracts. So one of the opportunities that this pandemic may present is that some hotel companies or some hotel owners may not be able to financially to continue to run their businesses. So Melia are ready in the right locations around the UK to look at management contracts. But we have invested, and we are investing millions of euros in the Melia White House, which for me shows our commitment into the UK, into London, and also the fact that we're doing it in the middle of a global pandemic shows that we believe that this pandemic is deep and it will hurt, but it won't be forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you, guys. That's great. Another question I have here coming from Stuart, which again, I think it's maybe for whoever of you would like to answer it. Stuart says, I'm a consultant specialising in the sports industry, and there are lots of conversations about how to make events safe for spectators. conversations happening between the hospitality and industry and other industries such as sports to find ways to collaborate and help large events return. He says, for example, Wimbledon was due to start on Monday and would have brought a lot of people from all over the UK and the world into London. If people are going to attend events, they'll need to feel safe and not just at the events themselves, but with the travel and the whole stay altogether. So what do you think about that?
I mean, focusing on Wimbledon, they were very smart and they had a pandemic insurance. It was in the news a few weeks ago. So they actually, from the organization point of view, they recovered most of the revenue lost because of the event. And also linking it to particularly on the tennis news, we've all seen now what's happened with Novak Djokovic organizing a tournament in Croatia, Serbia, and a lot of people getting contagiated from the virus. So I think we'll have to be a few more months probably. First, as Adam was saying before, recommendations from governments are based on science. So scientists are the ones saying when it's safe to do so. Now they changed from 2 meters to 1 meter, but still, obviously, you cannot put tennis, Wimbledon, or a football stadium. Imagine Wimbledon, 80,000 people together. That's non-viable. Now, can you sell a venue? And as Yvonne was saying before, arrange social distancing in a hotel event is different because it is more formal. But are you talking about like a concert or sporting event? It's very challenging to try to keep people, like 2 seats away apart from each other. So it's going to be a long time, I think, until that's possible.
I think from what I have seen and heard, that the meetings and events industry bodies are talking to the UK Hospitality Association around how events can be held. In Melia, we have ready the protocol and processes to be able to host events safely, but the capacities are vastly reduced. So a meeting room that could hold 100 before is probably getting down to nearly 30. So you have to look at the commercial viable, whether you take the business or not. I think regarding events specifically, and there's two things I'd like to say, is that I think tourism, hospitality, and the events industry is finally getting the recognition from the public and the government of how much it supports a wider infrastructure. If you have an 80,000 people at Wembley Stadium, for example, how that supports the taxi drivers, the pubs, the hotels, the restaurants, the corporate hospitality, the cleaners, everything that has a knock-on effect. And once you stop the spectator part of that, it has a knock-on effect down the supply chain. And I think that supply chain in our industry has always been taken a little bit for granted. And I always think of the end user of that supply chain. So the taxi driver that picked up from Heathrow Airport terminal that's now closed, how much revenue he's lost. So I think the government, we will always be dictated by the government advice, by the science. But I think we will get back to the point of spectator events maybe in Q4 or Q1 next year, where capacities will be reduced. So, for example, a stadium that could hold 80,000 may reopen for 20 or 25,000, which is good, and it will have a knock-on effect. But I do think there'll be slight reluctance to be in confined spaces, especially, and I heard this yesterday, of where people will be shouting or people will be speaking a lot. So if you are a passionate football fan like myself and you take your frustration out on the referee, there is people are saying they don't want to be near people that are doing that because of the potential spread of anything. So I think there's a lot of things to consider before large-scale events happen. But I think it has done the industry some good with the importance of it being escalated.
Great, thank you. Okay, we just had another question that's come in. This is from Maria Jose, and she says, this is for all of you again. She says, do you believe in what some experts are saying, that people and companies will start going to smaller places to have their meetings, or as in for these to take place outside of London? Or do you think London will continue to have a decent demand as companies are working and promoting the destination of London?
I think from research that we did with corporate clients, and we've asked about 2,000 of our clients for some feedback. Majority of them at the moment are postponing their events The one that thinking about doing the events, they are considering doing it at a smaller sizes, and definitely considering technology, and the hybrid meeting terminology came out, which is very trendy now, the same as Zoom and all the other words, new normal and so on. So I think it's definitely cost-effective option for the company, who is also suffering financially, to, instead of holding 300 people for a meeting, they will organize it only for 100 who have to be there, and the remaining 200 can log in via the video conference, just what we are doing. For that, we need to have a better internet, better connection, better technology, and better technician on site and things like that. So this is, I think, what we are gearing up for. And I think in retrospect, this is what might happen in a short period of time, like from now to, let's say, December, January, February, March. I think in future, people will long for things to go back to the normal, and they want to start traveling again. But this is still a long way to go, in my opinion. In a short term, I think that's a possibility.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, just a last question to sum up then, that I think will round up everything that we've covered today really nicely, is what do you all think recovery is going to look like, and what will be the new normal? What will the new normal be like with regards to the hotel industry? You can each say what you think for that, if you like. Maybe Adam. Maybe you'd like to start.
I was hoping you would pick Pablo.
Sorry.
I think I don't necessarily subscribe to people saying the new normal, because I don't think in our business there's ever been a single day or a shift that's been normal. So I think in our business we are used to flexibility and troughs and peaks and crises that come and go. I do think it will take a while. Some of the information I'm reading is, like I said, mice might be 22 or 23 that mice business will return. I think technology will be the one of the big factors, and I think certainly in my hotels, technology needs to get a lot better to make sure it works properly and it works faultlessly, because people will depend on it. I think when the vaccine is developed, I think this will escalate the recovery. But I said this before, the industry will come back. It's definitely not forever, whilst it might feel like that. And there is clearly going to be a knock-on effect to levels of employment in our industry. But equally, like I said before, yesterday there was, I think, 3,500 people put on notice of redundancy from baggage handlers at the airports. I think this shows the knock-on effect that travel, both domestically and internationally, has to the supply chain. But it will come back, because it's always come back. So I don't see why it will be any different right now. But I do think people have to be a little bit patient, and I do think people will be slow at the uptake. But I do think once social media kicks off with hotels opening, being busy again, I think the confidence will come back. And I also think it's our obligation as an industry to tell people we are ready, it's safe for you to come, and most importantly, give people a really good hospitality experience. I'm looking at my reception desk right now. Did I ever think that we'd be checking people in behind Perspex plastic screens? Absolutely not. But it is what it is. And it currently is not the new normal, it's currently what's required, because it's not normal, it's what's required. But that screen doesn't stop an engaging conversation, a fantastic recommendation of a restaurant or a coffee shop or a great park to explore in London. People will want the reassurance from a brand that your stay is in their hands, you know. And that's what I try and get across to my team, is that our job is not only to look after the hotel, but to look after the destination that we reside in, because we have an obligation to the supply chain. And I'm very, it weighs on me heavily that, you know, if we pick a coffee shop that we recommend people to go to, we are helping their business. And I think that's really important. But as soon as that air bridge is lifted, I think this will be the first kickoff for the event. But I think the rest of 2020 will be difficult, and I think Q1 will start to see signs of recovery in our business.
Fantastic. Yeah. Yvonne or Pablo?
I think trust. I think that trust needs to come back for the clients to know that they can feel safe, which will come from the fact that there is more publicity, there is more reassurance from government as well, but it is safe. I think vaccine will play the major role. It will take time, the recovery will be slow, but it will definitely come back. Yeah, similar comments to Adam, to be fair.
Yeah, I'll add, as a colleague of mine calls it, is a post-COVID pre-vaccine.
Fantastic.
So it's a temporary thing. It could be a matter of 3 months, could be 18 months until the vaccine is, globally spread. But yeah, it will be a temporary thing. I'll recover. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, thank you so much, guys. That was all the questions we had. Thank you everyone for writing, and we had so many great questions. That was really, really good. And thank you, Adam, Pablo, and Yvonne. It's really insightful, everything you've shared with us, and I hope for everyone who's joined us today, it's given you a lot of good food for thought for your companies and the industries that you're in as well, be that hospitality or otherwise. Later on this afternoon, I will send out a feedback email with a survey that we'd really appreciate it if you could fill in for us, so we can keep going about improving our online events. But I'm also going to include in that Adam, Pablo, and Yvonne's contact details. So if you would like to find out more about their hotels or their services, or if you have, or how they're preparing for their reopening as well, you can contact them via there. And keep an eye on the Spanish Chamber website for information about our other online events that we're doing. But yeah, thank you so much, guys, for joining us today. It was a really, really useful session.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank
day,
you,
everybody.
Hannah.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye, Adam.